Hello, everyone. This is yet another episode of Career Talks by Welcome Solutions. And in these meetings, we talk with professionals who have fascinating career paths and who are willing to share their life hacks with us. And today I have great pleasure to introduce Roger Royse. He's a partner in the Palo Alto office of Haynes and Boone, LLP, and practices in the areas of corporate and securities law, domestic and international tax, mergers and acquisitions, and fund formation. He works with companies ranging from newly formed tech startups to publicly traded multinationals in a variety of industries. Roger is a fellow in the American College of Tax Counsel and former chair of several committees of the American Bar Association sections of business law and taxation. He has been an instructor or professor of legal, tax, and business topics for the Center of International Studies in Salzburg, Austria, as well as the Golden State University School of Law and Stanford Continuing Studies. And great to have you, Roger. Thank you so much for finding time to join us here at this little channel. And thank you so much for your time. I know that you're a very busy person, so I'm very glad that you could find time for this. I'm very curious how your career looked behind the scenes and what were your major career turns and your most difficult decisions that you had to take on the way. So I'm very curious to hear how this whole story looked from your own perspective.
Well, that's a broad, wide open question. Where do I start? So I started my practice back in my home state of North Dakota. Where I'm from, I know you have an international audience. It's a small state, or it was at the time. They've since hit oil there, so maybe I should have stayed. But I started representing oilmen. In fact, we had an oil boom even when I was young, when I first got out of law school. Never occurred to me that I ever might want to leave the state until after I started practicing. But I represent farmers and I represent oilmen and banks that lent to farmers, railroads sometimes, insurance companies. But it was a very agricultural, rural sort of practice. Later, when I was in New York, my friends would call it buffalo law because we have a lot of buffalo in North Dakota wandering the plains. Sometime about 4 years into my practice, I mean, everybody goes, if you look back on your life and you try to measure your life, it's always going to be in terms of turning points and tipping points. I mean, as you look back, those are usually not good events. I mean, if you remember them and if they cause big changes in your life, I guess for me, it was a good event. I just decided one day that I wanted to see New York City. And I went to New York City and just to visit. And I said, I'd kind of like to live here. This is exciting. And there seem to be a lot of people like me that are interested in the kinds of things that I'm interested in. And I had decided by then that I was going to be a lawyer because, you never really know for sure if you're going to do something until you give it a try. And I had a pretty thriving business, actually, even when I went to law school. But it wasn't very intellectually stimulating. And that's why I get into law. In fact, I felt guilty doing business because it was so easy.
Oh, that's unexpected. I mean, that's not what most people say about doing business. So I will have more questions about this part.
Well, I'm happy to talk about that. On the other hand, it was just far more lucrative than anything else. But it just seemed to me that I ought to be doing something more intellectually challenging. That's how I got into law. And as I got into it, I decided that of all the law that I'd done, tax was the most interesting. And I thought it was, again, the most challenging. And I do have a background. I'm a CPA. I had a background in accounting, so it's kind of a natural. So anyway, so I went to New York City and went back to law school, got an advanced degree in tax law, and took a job with a large law firm on Wall Street. This is at the end of the 80s. It was a big time in the commercial world. A lot of big deals. You probably saw some of the movies that came out of that era. If you saw Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah,
I'll give you an idea of what my clients were like. They were, demanding and
for sure.
Yeah, high flying, a lot of characters, but I was kind of used to it. I started with North Dakota oilmen, which are all characters, live by the dollar, die by the dollar, and go out to New York Wall Street investment bankers who have kind of the same attitude, just a different, just they're just selling a different service. Um, and again, turning points and tipping points. I had a great time doing that. But one day we represented some movie studios on large financial and complex tax matters. And the tax law had changed one day, and one of our clients was a big motion picture studio in Los Angeles, and nobody wanted to go, and I was the new guy, so my boss sent me to LA. And actually, I don't want to say which studio it was, but they had their own hotel right on their premises. So I basically lived on set for 2 weeks. So I was walking around, having coffee with movie stars and going out to discos at night and seeing famous musicians and which was all quite exciting. So I said, and plus the weather was nice. That's the thing that struck me the most because it was March when I came out. New York City in March is not a pleasant place. Los Angeles in March, like every other day in March, it's nice and sunny. And so I said, that's it. That's enough for me. I'm moving to California. And I did. But as I came to California, as I interviewed up and, I kind of looked around the West Coast, I said, LA is fun. But boy, Silicon Valley is where it's happening. I mean, this is where the future is because this is the center of the technology universe. And a metaphor that I heard somebody else use once, but I'm going to steal it because it's so good. The sense I got from going from other cities compared to Silicon Valley is a sense you might have when you walk through the airport and you know how there's the moving walkway. Being on the moving walkway is like being in Silicon Valley. Everything is just moving so much faster with a lot less effort. If you're not if you're not in Silicon Valley, you're not on a moving walkway. You're just watching things just move past you faster with less effort. And that is the sense I had about the way things were moving up here. So I moved here and I had to look back, and that was a long time ago. And I've been doing tech startups, emerging growth and venture capital since.
Okay, so you were doing this ever since you moved to California, more or less 30 years ago. That's pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was 30 years ago, believe it or not. It seemed like yesterday.
Wow. Well, I'm quite sure that there were also periods during these like long 30 years, and there were also a few different stages of your career. So I would like to know more about that. But first of all, how did it happen that you were already so successful as a business developer at such a young age when you were still a student? As you said, it was easy, but this is counterintuitive. I think for at least here in the Netherlands and in Europe, it doesn't. The belief is that 90% of all startups fail, and that's also what I see among people I know. It's very hard for them to start, and in general, business development is considered hard. So how did it happen? Maybe you're a natural talent. Maybe you're a gem.
No. Let's talk about that for a minute because that's a statistic that I use all the time too. But it's a deceptive statistic, and let me tell you why. Let me focus on three things. Number one, 90% of everything fails. 90% of everything I do fails. Or maybe 80%, because I launch all sorts of different initiatives all the time. I'm coming up with new products all the time. Most of them, they don't go anywhere. The market doesn't like it, or I missed it wrong in terms of legal solutions.
Mhm.
And I go out to my clients and I say, hey, here's a really good idea. You should do this. Everybody should do this. And I'll put a tremendous amount of effort in it. And I'll go talk to a lot of clients. And I've always done that my whole career. And I did that when I was in business too. Most of the time it's going to fail, and you need to know that. That's kind of what I like about Silicon Valley. People get that here. Failure is not the end of your career. Failure is a learning experience because the next few of them are likely to fail, but then you're going to hit that one big one that does well. I'll give you specific examples later if you'd like to hear them, but that's not a statistic that's unique to just companies. That's a statistic that's just the way capitalism works and the way free enterprise works. It's a system of we're the life we have a famous Supreme Court justice once said the life of the law is experience, not logic. That's the same with everything. It's experience, not logic. You don't know which idea or which company is going to succeed based on logic. Based on experience, and it takes a lot of experience. In the business world, let me give you a really good example. I have a client. Again, I can't use names, but he's from Europe. And he developed around 40 apps, mobile apps. 39 of those apps failed, okay? One of them took off. One of them is now a unicorn, okay? It is one of the most downloaded apps in the Apple App Store. It is hugely successful, and it's worth billions of dollars. Okay, so yes, the statistic is that most of the things he did fail. That doesn't make him a failure. It doesn't make his business a failure. It means he had 39 learning experiences before he hit the one that was hugely successful. I'll never forget when I incorporated him because he finally knew he had a winner. And that's kind of true of everything. So that's number one. People have to be ready to pivot and innovate and expect that some things work and some things don't, and you just try stuff. I've seen many companies, and I've seen many more failures than successes for sure, but those are just, like I say, those are just pivots. And there is one defining feature of successful entrepreneurs everywhere. There is one absolute defining feature, and that is grit. That is grit. Okay? Grit, perseverance, and endurance. That is the one defining feature. And if you look around, if you look at successful people, whether they're startup entrepreneurs, whether they're actors, whether they're Texas oil men or North Dakota farmers or whoever they are, their one defining feature is they don't hit a roadblock and give up, right? They just keep trying. And oftentimes that comes from early adversity and just learning that the world is not your friend and you're going to have to work at it. And some of it is maybe just innate and inborn, but I think it is the one defining feature that you see everywhere. So I wouldn't get hung up on that number of failures. Just expect, I moderated a panel of venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley at one point. And I remember one of the venture capitalists on the panel, we were talking about his successes and failures. And he said, well, I haven't really had any successes yet. He says, I'm kind of young at this. He says, so far, I've lost about $100 million of investor money. And he wore that like a badge of honor. Now, in some countries, if you lost $100 million of some investor's money, you'd have to kill yourself. You'd have to go into another line of work. Silicon Valley, that's a badge of honor. He said, look at all the experience I had, all the mistakes I'm not going to make again. Yeah. And he's a very successful VC now. That was about 10 years ago he said that. He's doing very well now. He's on his third or fourth fund.
No, that's amazing. Well, that's I fully share this view that this is absolutely a necessary ingredient to survive in business and to thrive. But actually, I was always wondering, and I'm curious what you think about this. There is also a vast number of people who never succeeded. So those are the people who are kind of skipped from the discussion. That they are silent losers who tried for many years and eventually resigned or failed or they just got burnt out. And I just wonder, how, what is the eventual percentage, of like success rate for the population of people who initially try? Because I understand that 90% of the time you fail, but people who keep on trying, many of them will eventually succeed, even if they fail 10 times. But there's also a large number of those that will get nowhere. And I'm always wondering, are these people, what is the impact of the luck factor? So if you learn from one project to another and you improve every time, then eventually, what is your chance to succeed? Because I can believe that there are also people who just lack the luck factor, and even though they are talented and they have grit, um, yeah, they might still get nowhere. I don't know how to express that better.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and it comes down to judgment, but luck is huge. I mean,
Mm.
I can't tell you how many times I saw the Facebook idea, before there was a Facebook,
Mhm.
right? Zuckerberg got lucky, right? It took a lot of luck for him to pull that off because he was not the first person to come up with that idea. He certainly didn't have the best technology. He just got lucky. He was in the right place at the right time. And you can say that about almost every successful company. There's a lot of luck that gets involved in that. There's no doubt. You can't deny that. But luck is not a strategy. You can't rely on luck.
Yeah.
Luck alone is not going to help. But the big, huge successes, I guess you could say maybe it's a numbers game or a game of odds. And we live in a random world, right? We're full of contingency and what the Germans call Dasein, uh, contingency, forfeiture, and I forget what the other thing is. So and randomness. So you have to consider the effect of luck, but you also might consider that tension that there is between in the valley here. This is kind of funny. We're schizophrenic. We have two sayings. One is that you really have to stick with it. That founders, like I say, have to have grit and perseverance and hard work and passion and commitment. On the other hand, you have to fail fast. So which is it? Do you fail fast because it's a bad idea, so stop wasting time on it and go do something else? Or do you just commit to it because you have the vision and nobody else does? And we can talk a lot about that, and we can say, well, that's just judgment and vision and knowing what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of luck in that, and knowing whether you should abandon something or stick with it until the rest of the world catches up to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is probably this concept of the dip. So this period of time when you already invest a lot of effort and resources into the project, but there are no results yet. And almost every startup goes through that phase at some point. So there is still not enough traction. And the question is, shall we continue or shall we fail now and restart with another project? And I think many like young companies have these dilemmas, especially today, when there is this confounding factor. There is a corona crisis, and sometimes it's hard to tell if after the crisis ends, you will naturally start getting traction, or rather you have some structural fundamental problem that will never be solved. So I have a feeling like I also have a lot of friends who are like trying to pull off a company, and they have this dilemma right now that they just cannot objectively judge the situation and figure out if yeah they should just hope that after corona things normalize and then the company finally starts making profits, or this is that there is another reason why they don't get enough profits yet. So very complicated. But do you
Yeah.
think that with all your experience and in the space, when you see a founder of a new company, let's say the first time founder, do you think that with all the experience you have, you can, with some probability, predict if this is going to be someone who eventually will succeed or not?
Um, I have a sense. Yeah. I mean, I'm as much a VC as my venture capital clients. I have to bet on winners because if I don't stay in business very long because I don't succeed unless my clients succeed. So I have a little bit of a sense, and I do my own due diligence, but I really like to get a sense of a person. And it's kind of somewhere in between. I want them to be committed, but not so committed they're going to do something crazy. Um, yeah, and it's intangible. I mean, certainly there are plenty of due diligence lists that you can go through. And um, let me put it this way: it's relatively easy to figure out which companies are not going to succeed.
Correct.
I mean, I've got a good checklist, and if they don't meet all the, team, product market fit, domain expertise, if they can't hit all the, categories on my checklist, we can cross them out. The figuring out who of the remainder are going to succeed, that's a lot harder. And I've missed some big ones that I just didn't believe in at all, and it turned out they proved me wrong. And of course, I've had my share of companies that just didn't. It's a, like I said, there's a luck element. They just didn't hit the market at the right time. But I think I've been pretty good at kind of having a good baseline.
Okay. Can you share some of these missed opportunities, or not really?
Not by name, but well, I can share some of the winners that by name that have allowed me to. For example, I worked early on with Lyft, the car
Okay.
company, and that one. Well, that one, honestly, I didn't get it. I just didn't understand the gig economy. I'll be honest with you. That's why I'm a lawyer and not a client, I guess. But look how hugely successful. Similarly, I've done work for some of the big crypto exchanges. I don't want to name them. I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't know if that's, how that's going to do or not. It's awfully risky. So I would say that I didn't have as much optimism in them as I should, but I figured there was I stayed with them. I figured they would probably do well, but I had no idea they were those companies would do as well as they did. They put it that way. I knew they'd succeed. I just didn't think they'd succeed as big as they did. Some of the ones I'll tell you one that I missed that I have been kind of kicking myself about. It's a medical device company. And they actually did check all the boxes. The team had a big pedigree. The technology was really solid, and I passed on them. I did not take them on as a client because they had made so many mistakes before they came to see me, legal mistakes. And I said, look, you would have to execute perfectly. You're going to have to get all of your stakeholders to agree, and all the stakeholders are already fighting. So it had all the signs of a company that was just going to fail for political reasons. And I said, I just don't think you're going to be able to fix all these problems. I'm good, but I'm not a magician. And somehow they did. Somehow everybody eventually realized that if they didn't give up a little and compromise and come to an agreement and clean up their prior mistakes, they would have nothing. And that one actually is a very, very successful medical device company. So that's one that, I probably should have had a little more perseverance with. But the signs to me were that, they were too far gone. So I know that's kind of general. Yeah, so I've had winners and losses. We all do, and we all have to admit that. Nobody picks all winners. Nobody picks all losers.
And that's very interesting. So you have brought, that means you have broad interests in terms of companies to work with. So
yeah, I work all across the spectrum. I do most of my stuff in agriculture technology, but a lot of health tech and a lot of fintech. I have some deep roots in blockchain. I work with a lot of blockchain companies, but in terms of industry, agriculture is really where I do the most. It's something I know about, and that's important to have a lawyer that understands your business. And then because I do so much in fintech, I got to learn blockchain, which is not just fintech. It's supply chain. It's everything. Blockchain is ubiquitous, or it will be.
Right.
And of course, health tech, because that's an area that's precision medicine and digital health. It's an area that is really seeing a lot of disruption these days.
Right. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, so indeed, these are the branches of IT industry that are now exploding. Are you also into quantum computing or nanoscience or topics like this, or?
I don't know a lot about the technologies. I have clients that do. And that's the good thing. As a lawyer, I don't really have to know the tech that much. It's nice if I know the industry that they're trying to attack.
Right.
But I just have to know how to protect their technology, protect their ideas, not how to code myself.
Right. So could we briefly come back to this question about how to become successful in business so young at such a young age? Because I'm still bugged by that, and I would like
You're
to.
bothered by that.
Yeah, I want to know.
Well, so I grew up in a small business family, an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a small businessman, and I learned at a super early age that I was going to have to work if I wanted anything, if I wanted any money. I mean, I was at what would probably be considered violating child labor laws now, working in my dad's trucks. Yeah, I've got pictures of me when I was barely old enough to hold a watermelon trying to push them off the truck, because that was part of what he did. So I've been working from as long as I can remember, and but mostly for myself. By the time I was in high school, I was, like I say, I lived in an agricultural area. I remember, buying truckloads of produce, and I wasn't even allowed to drive. I didn't have a driver's license, but I would illegally drive my pickup, out into an area and sit by the roadside and sell fruit and produce along the roadside. By the time I got out of high school, I was importing all sorts of stuff. Well, actually, by the time I got out of college, I was importing from China. By the time I got out of high school, I was buying from wholesalers. And most of what I was doing was sitting alongside the road selling this stuff. But eventually, I was just doing a lot of commerce, just buying and selling things. And it was a lot of fun. Business is fun. Not every product was successful. Not every year was successful. But I had more good years than bad years. So that's why I say I got used to the idea that you're going to win, and you're going to win on some and you're going to lose on some, but hopefully you're good enough that the winners outpace the losers and you come out ahead at the end. So I've always had that sense. I understand small business, and that was important for me as a lawyer because I had to understand what my clients were like, what they had to go through. I really got a taste of that about 15 years ago when I opened my own law firm, because that was a major undertaking for me. I had to sign a big fat lease, and I had to buy a bunch of equipment and furniture and make a huge investment, all on faith, all on faith. But I had this, looking back on it now, seems like an extreme amount of hubris and confidence. And it turned out, to all play out the way I wanted it to. But I do remember what that was like. And, like they say, there is nothing that sharpens your focus like having to make a payroll.
Yes.
And I have to do that and I had to do that twice a month for the last 15 years. And just the startup made me really kind of empathize with my startup company founders. I know what they go through. And that was one of the best educations I had, because you can't really experience, just because some of these things that just the administrative part, how you've heard the expression that, for want of a nail, the shoe is lost, and for want of a shoe, the kingdom was lost. All these little things that had to be taken care of, or they cause major problems in your organization. Yeah, that was a real good education. So I've had enough background in business that I think I have a lot of understanding of what my clients have to go through when they start companies.
Right. But what was your first business then? Because from the context, I understood that you already created businesses before going to the law school. So what
Produce was my first business, buying and selling produce, but that was just small. My first real business was, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna be surprised, was fireworks. I imported fireworks from China and sold them here in the United States.
Well, sounds yeah, sounds
exciting. Yeah, so it's fun. It's a fun business, because especially when you get to sample the products, because I always get a kick out of fireworks.
right. Um, So how did you come up with this idea? Actually, it was I believe way before Amazon and AliExpress ever came to life. So how did
Well, we didn't have an internet then, so it had nothing to do with, there was nothing online about it. Although these days, of course, you can buy all this stuff online. So I probably should have stayed in that business. I'd probably be making a lot more money today.
right? Well, I mean, blockchains is also fireworks today, I think.
Yeah, there you go. Different kinds of fireworks now that I
Yeah,
deal with.
it also blows up. So you're not far off from the original plan. All right. So actually, referring to that, you said before that what can effectively motivate you is the necessity to get the paycheck and to meet ends. But I believe now you must be a wealthy person given all this success in all these projects. So what's the since I normally talk to people like me who finished PhDs and who are now a few years into their new careers, I think most of us are not on that stage yet. So we don't have the luxury to be able to say that we are financially free. Not yet, but I guess you are. So my question for you would be, what keeps you going? So what gives you inspiration to keep on working? Because I can imagine this is an incredibly competitive space, and yeah, how do you find energy to still you still to be able to work in these areas, like the areas that you chose? You have to always be on top of things and be at the frontier of the development, technical development, and how do you find energy to still keep on going, and um, how to what motivates you the most?
Well, when people retire, I've heard it say that people retire so they can do the things they really want to do. I have the luxury where I'm already doing what I really want to do, right? And I have a few more things I need to get done. Let me put it that way. So in a way, what else would I do? What would I retire to?
Yeah.
Um, um, like I say, I do law, right? I do legal advice. That's the product, but I deal with the newest and most innovative companies and products in the world. I'm at ground zero for what's going on and what's happening and what's starting. So yeah, that's what I want to do. And I don't know how else to say it. I'm doing what I want to. It doesn't really feel like work. It feels like me doing the things that I want to do. And I've got a lot of projects coming up I need to get finished with. Hope this summer, if it kills me, I'm going to finish a book that I've been working on. I've got um, several other things. So let me put it this way. You'll like it when you see it.
I'm sure of that. So what's the book about? I'm very curious.
My first book that I wrote was called Dead on Arrival, How to Avoid the Legal Mistakes That Could Kill Your Startup. And I need to keep a copy around here. Oh, here we go. So the second book is a little more positive. The second book is going to be, this is a story about business failures
Mm-hmm.
and what they should have done differently to avoid that result. That I've seen over the last 35 years. The second book is about business successes. It's about companies that did everything right that I've worked with. And you might not have read about them in the newspaper, but they were very successful companies and successful exits. And the book it's legal and business. And the book is finished. It's just going through the editing process now, and I hope to be completely done with it by this summer.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm again. Yeah, I will have to track what you're doing. Do you think that? So, who is the audience of the book? Since it's treats on like legal aspects of the business, do you think that um, um, yeah, like people who are in general interested in business development might benefit from reading it, or is it more for the specific audience that is more into law and tax law and your specific area of expertise?
It's for startup entrepreneurs and for those who advise startups. This is just basic ground zero stuff that people ought to know. And there's a lot of stories in there about companies. I've already told you one of them, about the 40 apps. But there are a lot of other stories in there about companies that have done well and how they did well and what they did right. And it's also a good roadmap. It's a good outline for the thing is, you've asked me a lot about success and successful people and habits of successful people. I'll tell you one, it's to read a lot. Successful people are constantly learning. They're constantly understanding. And one thing I keep telling audiences, I speak to thousands of people every year, God, every month, but I tell them, you really have to self-educate. You cannot rely on the world to just give you these answers or even tell you which questions to ask. You can't even rely on your lawyer to tell you which questions to ask. You have to know that. Because a lot of lawyers will just answer the question asked, and maybe that's helpful, maybe not so much. So you need to self-educate, and there's not enough books out there that are easy to read on what questions you should ask your lawyer about law. The books that are out there on law are written by lawyers, so they're exceedingly dull. I mean, they're just so dull, and nobody wants to read them, and no one can get through them. So do the right thing, and video, blog post. I have hundreds of hours of video on all of these topics. I got podcasts that are busted up into small segments, so they're easy to digest. But self-education is really important.
Yeah, fully agree. Well, I'm very curious right now, and I think I fully agree with what you just said, that most books about law, they just too dry. Like that, it's very important to keep this like style of writing vivid. And I also wrote a book, and it's about career development for PhDs. And I try to I was blogging for many years before, and I try to keep the style more like a blogger style of writing than a classic literature, and it resonates with the audience. I get a lot of positive comments that this book is actually easy to read and just reads through very smoothly, and not like a textbook, but it's also actually effective use of anecdotes is actually one of the, I think, ingredients for success. So I'm looking forward to your book then. I presume it's going to be available on Amazon this summer?
Yes, hopefully by the end of the summer, this year for sure. And I've got a few other projects coming out. They're company and startup related. That some legal products that I think it's time that the world should see, that I'm going to be promoting, and then some social media experiments, technology solution that I'm involved in. So lots of cool stuff. So stay tuned. You can follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the easiest.
For all of you guys who are watching, please check out this information. All the links are below. Yes, indeed. Yeah, okay. All the information will be there. And yeah, so maybe let me ask you, like we have to slowly wrap up, but maybe if I could still ask you about your general advice for young people at the start of their careers who are now finishing their university education, and they are dreaming, like many people today are dreaming of being free, being independent, being a creator of a new concept and a new startup. And what would be, I guess, I mean, this is a very broad question, and you, I mean, I know that we could talk for hours, but if you could give a few pieces of advice to all those young people, how to start, or how to even figure out if you're the right person to do it.
how to figure out if you're the right person to do it. Well, you got to try things, you know.
Yeah.
I have a bias towards action. And I think that's the important thing is you do have to just get out there and try it. One of the, one of the mistakes I see people make, again, when I was talking about reading, read Lean Startup. Um, and, uh, and listen to the podcast, listen to Masters of Scale. One of the things you'll learn from a lot of these folks is that they will try things, even though they're not perfect, right? And they will just go out and pivot and innovate and change. But it's important to just get out there and do. And you might decide that you have a real aptitude for something. You might decide that not so much, but you don't know until you try. So that would be my first advice. I see people that are paralyzed and afraid, and what if I'm not good at it? Well, then give it a try and find out. If you're not, you'll go do something else.
Okay. All right. And maybe one more question would be, if you had a chance to do something else, like looking back at your whole career, I mean, if you had a chance to do something differently or make a different choice at some point in your career, is there anything that you would change or nothing at all?
um, yeah, yes. I mean, I know everybody says no, I would do things
Okay.
exactly the same. I wouldn't change a thing. That is such BS. you know,
Good
I'm,
to
I'm,
know.
I'm, I subscribe more to the philosophy of Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher who once said that he regretted every decision he ever made because he knows there were 15 other decisions that he could have made that might have gone in a better direction. So yeah, and then the other thing as a lawyer, I'll be honest, we're all frustrated businessmen because for the 9 failures that I see, I also see the one humongous success, and I see that every day. I see that every day. So yeah, if I could go back and do it again, I probably would have done something that took a little less effort and would have, that would have been a little more high flying, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, good that you're saying, because I'm a bit bored with all these people saying that there are no mistakes, there are just lessons, and yeah, I think I also regret a lot of my decisions because you only have one life, and if a bad decision leads you to a few years of wasted time, then I mean it's just a bad decision. You have to also admit to mistakes sometimes, and that's indeed I agree with this. Um,
Yeah, I know. I heard Tony Robbins say once is you should be thankful for it, like all those really bad things that happened to you because that was a character building experience. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but you might have gotten by just fine without that character building experience. Your character might have been built, just quite enough the way it is. So I advise you to avoid those character building experiences and try to go down the path of, if not least resistance, just most success.
right. Indeed. Oh, by the way, I have also one a bit unrelated question, but I'm very curious about this. So, if I have a chance, then I'd like to ask you a bit because it's quite unrelated. So it's more about how the political system in the US actually influences companies in terms of taxation and law. Because like every single time the government and the president actually changes, like there is a major change in the whole like taxation system, right? At least this is what happened recently when Joe Biden took over the White House. That's from what I understood that there are lots of changes in the tax system. So uh, how do you feel about it? Is it that every 4 or 8 years you have to rescue all the companies you were working with from like very like fundamental changes that happen in the market because of the political change, or is it difficult, or is it not a problem in your practice?
Is it difficult? It's like this. And this is the best metaphor I have. And I'm primarily a tax lawyer, and I advise companies. And imagine that you're out in the middle of the desert in the middle of the night driving a car, and there's nothing around, and you know you're low on gas, but your gas meter is broken, and you know there's a gas station up ahead, but you don't know how far, and you don't know when it closes, and it's getting late at night, so you got to get there before it closes, but if you go too fast, you're going to use more gas, so you might run out before you get there. So just imagine that scenario. What do? Do you drive fast and take the risk of running out of gas and get in there on time? Do you drive slow? I mean, is there even a gas station in front of you? You know, it's like having a million variables. That's the world I live in. It's a world of a million variables, and and tax is one of those variables when we advise companies. And it's a matter of judgment, not science, and especially in politics. So here's what we have now. 4 years ago, when we had a Republican government, of course, the tax system changed. And it changed in a way that didn't help us much here in California, but certainly helped small business, lowered the corporate tax rate to the lowest level it's been, I think, since I've been practicing, maybe ever, 21%. But a lot of companies did a lot of planning based on that. It also changed the whole international regime. But at the time, I remember telling people, well, wait, you don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. There could be a Democrat president. But that's not enough. But then there has to be a Democrat Senate, and then there has to be a Democrat House of Representatives, and they have to be far enough to the left that they'll change the system, but we don't know. There's like a million variables. Well, here we are 4 years later, and some of those variables have played out. We have a Democratic president and Senate and House, but it's relatively moderate. So we don't know. Even today, I don't know. But the bet is looking like all the decisions people made 4 years ago are going to turn out to be short-lived. For example, I have plenty of companies that went into a corporate structure because of that low rate. That low rate looks like it's going to go away. That's almost a certainty. A lot of people did a lot of planning based on low capital gains rates. Well, it looks like that might go away. A lot of people have always done planning based on the way our estate tax systems works. That's been proposed to go away. So there's a million variables, but we still don't know because it's an evenly divided, it's an evenly divided Senate. So it could go either way on this. Yeah, I mean, I could talk for an hour about tax policy, and I already have. I've given presentations on this, trying to read the tea leaves and look at the crystal ball. And my conclusion is that it's just going to take, it's a guess. It's still a guess. I have a view as to what I think will happen,
Right.
but even my view is I'm in that car out in the middle of the desert in the middle of the night with not much gas and a broken meter. It's still a best estimate.
Right. And actually, is the current government pro blockchain, by the way? Probably this, right?
Well, yes and no. Okay, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'll say more no than yes, and I'll tell you why. Most of the blockchain initiatives have been promoted not at the executive level, but actually in Congress by some congressmen, and they do not have the power they once had to push these initiatives, because the initiatives are generally less regulation. That is generally the initiative, and that is not the position of the current government. This is especially true in securities regulation. We have a commissioner of the Securities and Exchange Commission who taught blockchain at MIT, so he understands the technology very well, but he is in favor of a strong regulatory regime. And unfortunately, when it comes to blockchain as it relates to securities, like tokenizing securities, ICOs, et cetera, the rest of the world is not so much interested in regulating these things out of existence. So the industry is pretty much up and left the United States. And while we were making great strides, I mean, we've got exchanges now in the US, alternative exchanges that can deal with tokens. I don't think the tide's going to shift back. See, the United States is all, I tell people, I work with a lot of non-US companies coming to the US. And the first thing I tell them is you got to get used to the fact that this country is schizophrenic, right? It'll drive you nuts because you've got competing policies and you never know which one is dominant at the time. And one of our policies in the United States is consumer protection. That is the dominant paradigm today. That is dominant under the Democrat regime. The other is freedom of contract and free enterprise and the right to go out and kind of, build your business and enter into contracts with people and make deals that you want to make. That is not the dominant paradigm today as of this moment. But that could change, that could change overnight with it. That will change in 2 years, our next election. So that's one thing that'll drive people crazy. So you have to balance those two things. And then we also have a federal and state system. So we've got that dichotomy going as well. And some states, like California, have a much different view of the world than states like Texas. And so you have to, and if you're doing business in the U.S., you're dealing with both those states with two different views. So I've forgotten what your original question was, but it had something to do with blockchain. And the answer is, it's a technology. It's not going to be stopped. It's not going to be held back. All of these, the thing about great technology is to try to stop them through regulation is like trying to hold the wind up with a sail. And there are people out there with these sails trying to stop the wind from blowing. And they're going to create a little shelter for a little while, but they're not going to stop this in the long term.
Right. I was also asking because here in the Netherlands, the Dutch government is officially pro-blockchain, but in fact, well, it's a difficult situation. So when you make peer-to-peer transactions and on blockchains, they don't have any problem with it as long as it's private transactions. But for businesses, for tax related purposes, it's much more difficult. And every company that has anything to do with blockchain payments, like payments in cryptocurrencies, and doing anything else involving blockchains, is under the scrutiny of the tax office. And actually, my company is one of the first companies in the Netherlands that actually accept payments in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning for all our products. And I'm under the I'm under the eye of the of the tax office because they, even though everything is like there are logs of all the transactions, and there is always a parity of how much every payment is worth in euros, so everything is clear. But still at this moment, the Dutch government is very I wouldn't say skeptical, but I think they are cautious about blockchain, and for businesses to actually adopt blockchain, especially as a payment system, that's you can fall into legal trouble for this here in the Netherlands. So
Well, I hope you.
yeah.
I hope you resolve that. I was one of the first law firms to accept Bitcoin in payment. Nobody wanted to give it to me, but I was certainly willing to take it way back when. I actually take that back. I did get some clients that gave me Bitcoin in payment, and they regret it today. It's the most expensive legal service they've ever received. My experience, by the way, before we close, I have a long experience with working with companies from the Netherlands. As I said, I do a lot of work with agriculture technology. The Netherlands is the #1 agricultural country in Europe, as you well know. The Netherlands government is also very committed to promoting agriculture technology within the Netherlands. They even formed a fund around that initiative. The Minister of Agriculture for the Kingdom of Holland, when he visited California, he made 2 stops. He stopped to visit in the Secretary of Agriculture in California at the governor's office, and he stopped to visit me in my office and talk to some venture capitalists and some tech companies. So there's a lot of opportunity available in your home country.
Mm-hmm. Great. Very interesting to know. I mean, I'm also not Dutch. I'm Polish. I live in the Netherlands for some time now, but there are still lots of things about the Netherlands that I should learn probably. So I'll definitely check it out. And okay, great. So thank you so much, Roger, for all this wonderful insights. And for your time, for your precious time. I know how much it actually costs, because I remember our chat like from 4 years ago. I met you in the Bay Area, and I remember you were telling me how much like an hour of your office, office time actually costs. So I know it's a very valuable asset. So
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
worse now. Well, talk is cheap until you talk to a lawyer.
Yes. So thank you so much. And I would like to thank to everyone who is watching the episode. And if you would like to get more of this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. And thank you for being here with us, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.